Place. We move to question 4. Mr. Danny Baker. Mr. Baker.
Question number 4.
Minister.
I'm pleased to advise that the first phase of West Belfast Greenway is programmed to commence construction in the coming months. Officials are also currently preparing a planning application for the next phase of the West Belfast Greenway and hope to submit this application in the autumn. When this section of the route is complete, it will provide an attractive, high-quality, active travel route that is predominantly traffic-free between Andersonstown and the city centre.
Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Concordia, and thank you, Minister, for your answer. Can you provide an update on the wider delivery of the Belfast Cycling Network Plan?
Yes, so since the Belfast Cycling Network Delivery Plan was first published in 2022, approximately 13 kilometres of new cycle paths have been built in partnership with Belfast City Council on the Lagan Gateway and Forth Meadow Greenway schemes. Improvements have also been made to existing facilities with the installation of environmentally friendly lighting along the 7-kilometre urban section of the Comber Greenway and on Stranmillis embankment, with new red surfacing laid along the existing segregated cycle track between Ormo Road and Governor's Bridge. Design work is substantially complete on a further 4 schemes. These are currently at various stages of the statutory process required to legislate cycle routes before construction can commence. Design is ongoing or due to commence shortly on a further 8 schemes, and officials are working to bring a number of these forward for public engagement later this year. Officials are also considering the prioritisation of future schemes within the Belfast Cycling Network in line with the emerging Eastern Transport Plan and other significant changes that have occurred in Belfast in recent years.
Neil McAllister.
Number 5.
My department does not monitor spend on cycling infrastructure separately from other active travel improvements. The total spend recorded on dedicated active travel projects in the last 3 financial years include £12 million in 22-23, £10 million in 23-24 and provisionally £17 million for 24-25. In addition to spend on new active travel projects, my department routinely undertakes many activities that are primarily for the benefit of pedestrians and cyclists that are not included within these figures. Overall spend within my department on active travel is in the region of £45 to £50 million, which equates to around 5 to 6% of the overall transport budget.
Ms McAllister.
Thank the Minister for her answer. And would you agree that improving and enhancing the opportunity for people to cycle is essential for public health and reducing congestion? And how will you ensure that active travel budget prioritises schemes over fixing footways and repairing streetlights?
Minister.
Well, I think that the member refers to fixing footways and streetlights as if that's it takes up a lot of the budget. What that actually means in reality is that those schemes that are already in place, so where there's maintenance required, and they are to ensure that active travel routes are safe for everyone to use them, so be that making sure that they're properly lit or that the surfaces are safe for pedestrians or cyclists, then that is part of that work. However, there's a differentiation between the maintenance of schemes and then new schemes, and part of that also is ensuring that they are safe for people to use, and that is relating to the quality of the surfaces as well as being properly lit. So if we want to really do this well, we have to ensure that those routes that we are providing, whether it's new or maintaining existing, are accessible for everyone. And that they are able to be used at all times during the day, that they're properly connecting communities and properly fulfilling what we set out to do.
Boyle.
Concordia, and could thank the Minister for her answer so far. Minister, could I ask you, how would you determine active travel funding is fairly distributed?
So I understand that walking, wheeling or cycling is always going to be the most attractive as a mode of transport over shorter distances, as it's more achievable probably for most people. So it's therefore important to target investment in areas where it has the potential to be most beneficial. However, striking the right balance between urban and rural investment is also very important. So to ensure fairness and consistency, we will use the same guiding principles that apply in larger towns and cities to prioritise pedestrian and cycling improvements in smaller settlements. And we'll therefore be placing particular emphasis on links to schools, public transport and small town or village centres. It's fair to say this isn't an exact science, and my department continues to engage with all local councils and other key stakeholders to try to strike that right balance in this regard, to ensure that we're delivering for everybody across the north and not just focusing on those bigger areas.
Keith Buchanan.
So far, Minister, the active travel budget, as you're aware, is sitting around 10%, or that's the aim to be at 10%. Is this figure, I think it's currently 6 or 7%, possibly thereabouts, is this going to be a detriment to other existing roads and existing footpaths, because we're swinging too much one way and we can't drive or walk on what we have existingly there?
So I think the member has raised this issue before, and I don't think it's a detriment of other. These are schemes that we have to do, and we want to try to encourage people to get out of their cars and use their bikes or walk or whatever that may be. So I don't think that one should replace the other. I think we are working to ensure that we're providing options for everybody, and we are working towards our climate change targets in relation to that. You will know that this is set out in those targets, that I have to allocate 10% of my budget. So this is a requirement for me to do it, but it's also very important, because if we want to encourage people to have healthier lifestyles, to get out and about, to also then get out of their cars, then we have to do it right, and this is how we're doing it, and we are working towards that 10% budget. In terms of the overall roads piece and maintaining our footpaths, well, maintaining our footpaths is part of that. So I think that's important to say. You also will be aware that we are looking at the road maintenance strategy as well, and how we can do that better. I think it's fair to say that we all recognise the shortfalls in the budget, but just take this from me, that I'm committed to making sure that as much money as I can get into that, to ensure that we can upgrade our roads and fix them to the best of my ability, the best of the department's ability, is something I'm very focused on.
Murphy.
Gormiaga, Count Collier, question 6.
Minister.
Road safety is a high priority for my department, and I'm committed to working proactively to make our roads safer and to address the needs of all road users. Since 2020-2021, the department has delivered 2 tranches of part-time 20-mile-per-hour speed limits at 216 schools, which is an investment of £4 million. The department previously piloted this approach at 17 schools, bringing the total number of schools with part-time 20-mile-per-hour speed limits to 233. A review of the initiative introducing part-time 20-mile-per-hour speed limits at schools has now been undertaken and is available on my department's website. The review recommended the provision of a 3rd tranche of part-time speed limits at schools with a more targeted intervention approach. A new policy document has been issued to enable an interim and modest programme to be taken forward in this financial year. And given current funding pressures, tranche 3 is to be a bit more modest in size. A programme of schools to be treated in the next financial year has now been prepared. And this draft programme was based on the existing scored listings, so those schools that have already been scored as part of the previous tranches, but with preference, at my request, given to rural schools which are located on roads where the national speed limit applies, given the significance of that higher speed limit and how that may impact on road safety. So I'm currently considering the draft programme, and I hope to be in a position to make a formal announcement this week.
Ms Murphy.
Gormiaga, Count Collier, and I'd like to thank the Minister for her detailed response. And I know this is an issue that I have been lobbying herself and the department on continuously over the last number of months. Minister, when will we be likely to see tranche 3 announced?
So, as I said, I have been considering that and looking at what we can do, and can we maximise the budget that I have to ensure we get as many schools in this tranche as possible. And I've been back and forth with officials in recent weeks to ensure that we're doing the maximum amount of schools in this tranche. So, as I said, I'm hoping to make the announcement later this week.
John Buckley.
I want to believe the Minister that road speed and road infrastructure is a priority for the department. With that in mind, the Minister will know that within the last hour, a judge has ruled that the decision to proceed with the AF5 by the department cannot stand. With that in mind, will the Minister now accept that whether it's in our infrastructure, our economy, or agriculture, that the current Northern Ireland climate change targets are a dangerous weight around our neck?
Minister.
I don't think this is related to 20-mile-per-hour speed limits. Pardon? No. I don't know how I would answer that in relation to 20 mile per hour speed limits, to be honest with you, Speaker. Look, I don't know. Are we asking about the Climate Change Act, or are we asking about the speeding?
Order. Next question, Stuart Dixon.
Topic. Minister, while we certainly do welcome 20 mile an hour speed limits outside schools, one of the regular questions that I've heard asked in this chamber, and will ask again today, is what action are you taking with regards to encouraging the number of children to cycle and walk and use walking buses to get to school?
So I thank the member for this answer, and just last week I actually met with Sustrans as well, and I know they do significant work in schools, and I'm aware that the department helps to fund the cycling proficiency. I think that we have lots more that we can do, and something I'm keen to do. You will know that I've recently announced that I'm taking forward legislation around safety on school buses. I think that that in itself is something that we can do, and I've requested a meeting with the Education Minister to see how we can work together in relation to that. And I think there is a very important education piece specific to that, to help our children be more aware while using buses, particularly getting on and off buses. I think, as well as that, you've talked about walking buses, and that is something I'm keen to explore further, as I know it is something that is very effective, and it is something that will encourage school children and their parents or carers, whoever's taking them to school, to do so in a more active way. So there's a lot of work that we are doing in relation to that. I think the overall active travel delivery plan, as I said earlier in responses to questions, outlines that focus on ensuring that we have safer routes that are linking schools with residential areas, and I also am working on permanent 20 mile per hour zones in those areas that are more residential, and that we are ensuring that we're providing safe links to schools, to shopping areas and things like that, so that we can continue to build on the work that's being done.
Mr McNulty.
Minister, declaring interest, Mary Fellis started his new school at St Malachy's in Camlock this morning, first day, which is all very nerve-wracking and exciting for him all at the same time. But I was approached by a concerned member of staff who asked me how to get the 20 miles per hour speed limit control zones for St Malachy's, Camlock and Chapel Road, and any other traffic control measures to keep the children safe, because she was really concerned about too many near misses in recent years.
Can I first send my best wishes to Satanta, and I hope he has a great first day and many happy years in St Malachy's, another great school in our constituency. And I know, as a parent of a P2 going into P3, this time just flies, so I'm sure you and your wife will be very excited for the time ahead. In relation to the specific school, I think all of the schools in all of our areas would ideally like to have the 20 mile per hour zones outside their schools, and I too have been approached by my child's school as well, because the road safety concerns are significant, and unfortunately all road users, everybody's in a hurry and don't often think of the implications when using the road. So as I've said earlier, this is a modest tranche, and we're currently finalising the schools who are already on the existing list in terms of where they have scored. There's no doubt that some schools may not get through in this tranche, but what I would suggest to the member, we can take that forward. So if they're not included in this one, we can make sure they're assessed for any future 20 mile per hour zones, as will others, as we work out a more long-term plan in relation to this, as well as any traffic camera measures. And I would encourage the member maybe to contact the section office to assess, or through my private office to assess that particular area of Camla, so that we can see what's required at that point, because I'm not sure, I haven't come across it to date, so happy to ask officials to look into that.
All in chambers.
Question 7.
Minister.
NI Water treats approximately 73 million cubic metres of wastewater per year at the 5 main wastewater treatment works that discharge into Belfast Lough. NI Water has advised that its models indicate that on average only 70,000 cubic metres of untreated sewage from wastewater treatment works is discharged into Belfast Lough annually, whilst approximately 3.5 million cubic metres of wastewater from the wastewater treatment works is discharged directly into Belfast Lough without being treated. It's crucial to note that only 1 to 2% of that is untreated, and that's not to take away from that being an issue, but it's just to put it in context with what's actually being discharged. NI Water estimate that approximately 80 to 95% of this spill volume is rainwater. 5 to 20% is everyday wastewater from homes and businesses, and 1 to 2%, as I've said, is untreated sewage. So as the member will know, and as the Assembly will know, I'm continuing to work with executive colleagues to provide NI Water with the adequate funding needed to allow it to deal with the problems in the wastewater system, not just in Belfast but right across the north. But I know Belfast Lough in particular is a significant issue, and we continue to look at solutions to that. As well as that, I continue to follow with the three-pronged approach that I have on many occasions alluded to while in this chamber, to secure firstly more investment for wastewater infrastructure, but also to look at what else we can be doing. The members may be aware this morning the first stage of my bill for the sustainable drainage was introduced, and I look forward to hearing the discussion around that in the time ahead.
Mr. Chambers.
Speaker, I think any amount of raw sewage getting into Belfast Lough is totally unacceptable. But I think everyone agrees that the wastewater treatment works that discharge into Belfast Lough do require a considerable amount of investment made in them to bring them up to the compliance standards that are coming down the line. Has the Minister got a strategy to find this investment to bring these treatment works up to standard?
Well, as I've said there, in terms of the overall issue of wastewater infrastructure, you'll be very familiar now with that three-pronged approach that I've alluded to in my previous response, and that is the way forward for me at present. However, in the interim, I've been working closely with NI Water and looking at what other ways we can be doing as much as is possible in the time that we have. So NI Water at present are providing additional maintenance to the treatment works around Belfast Lough to ensure that these assets can continue to operate in the short term until such times that we do have the budget available to undertake the more substantial upgrade that's required, and that is something that they're looking at right across the north as well. In addition to that, they continue with their programme of installing event duration monitors to identify the worst performing discharge points and to help ensure money is targeted where most needed. So within the very challenging financial context, we are looking at what else we can be doing to try and mitigate as much as possible. It's not ideal and it is unacceptable. I totally take that point. We shouldn't see any untreated sewage going into our waterways. That is not where any of us want to be. But until such times that we have the budget to do the work that is needed, we have to look at what else we can do to alleviate as best as possible if we can't fully eliminate that.
Done.
The Living with Water programme has been paused, the Living with Water programme in Belfast. How long, Minister, is this pause going to be? And can you outline your engagement with NI Water and also what more you are going to do to tackle the wastewater and capacity crisis that we have right across Northern Ireland?
So, as I said, I'll answer the second part of your question first. I think I've made it clear on numerous occasions here what my approach to this is, and particularly around securing further additional investment at every single stage, whether it's the monitoring round or whatever it may be. We are looking at where we can garner more funds to try and do as much work as we can. Although it is fair to say the whole executive budget potentially wouldn't do the work, or wouldn't, even if NI Water had the budget today. They have said themselves that it would take a long time for them to be able to deliver what's needed. So we're working through that, and I think my approach to everything in terms of budget is break it down and see what we can do and do well with the budget that we have. In relation to the pausing of the Living with Water plan, a review of the Belfast Living with Water plan was commissioned due to a rise in the estimated costs to deliver it from 1.4 billion to 2.1 billion, which I'm sure the member will agree is a significant rise during the course of the plan since it has been announced. The review concluded that the Belfast plan is still needed. However, the original 12-year delivery time frame is no longer viable. Projects in the plan, which include proposals to improve the water quality in Belfast Lough, will now be taken forward by my department and NI Water as normal business at a scale and pace achievable within available budgets rather than through a structured programme. So, as I've said, that approach to seeing what we can do with the budget we have until such times more funding is available. It was always accepted that additional funding would be required to deliver the Living with Water plan, and in the NDNA agreement, Living with Water was identified as a beneficiary of increased funding. However, this was not received. But just to say that I remain fully committed to the Belfast Plan's objectives to help protect against flooding, to enhance the environment and to grow the economy, and will continue, as I have been to date and as my predecessor has, to make the case for additional funding to expedite its delivery. And last financial year I did provide NI Water with £500 million in funding, so I hope that gives assurances of how committed we are to this.
Andrew McMurray.
But would the Minister accept that there is now an immediate need for additional action, given the current approach has made no difference to sewage spills and given the environmental peril that Belfast Lough is in?
I would agree, and I suppose that's the point that I'm making, is that I don't think any of us underestimate that this is a really live and significant problem. If I had all the money to do it, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but the reality is we don't. And difficult decisions have to be made every single day in terms of budget. But that doesn't mean that I stand still. That means we have to continue to lobby for the additional funds wherever it will come from, whether it's through the Executive or from the British Treasury. But the Executive Ministers around that table all recognise how important this is. Every one of us know that in order for us to move forward on many of the things that the programme for government sets out, but many of us as MLAs have prioritised, then we need to ensure that our wastewater infrastructure is fit for purpose. So I'll continue to work with executive colleagues in the first instance, but also looking at what other steps I can be taken in the interim to ensure that we are continuing to move forward till we get to the point where we are dealing with this problem in the most effective and efficient way.
Dr. Reckons, not in his place. Pat Shane.
I've secured £15 million over the next 4 years from the Public Sector Transformation Fund to develop and deliver a pilot project that will use nature-based solutions to help transform our urban drainage systems. The aim is to provide a range of nature-based drainage and flood management solutions to demonstrate their effectiveness in managing the flow of water through urban areas, helping to reduce flood risk and reduce pollution. Nature-based drainage solutions are cleaner, greener and can help slow the flow of water entering our sewers, which in turn will help to reduce the risk of out-of-sewer flooding. The overall target for the pilot project is to provide approximately 10,000 cubic metres of temporary rainwater storage by retrofitting sustainable drainage systems, commonly known as SUDs, to reduce the pressure on our constrained drainage and wastewater infrastructure. Officials are engaging with a range of stakeholders to discuss potential locations for nature-based solutions, focusing on bringing viable projects from concept to delivery within the framework of the Transformation Fund. The project will initially focus in the Fort William and White House areas within Belfast. However, interventions outside this area may also be considered where the benefits of nature-based drainage solutions can be demonstrated.
Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answer.
Agree with me that changing how we live with water can produce many benefits in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the more that we can utilise nature-based solutions, that we are doing that in a more sustainable way. And as I've mentioned earlier, I introduced the first stage of that bill. I think it's a very exciting time because it shows the innovation. I think so much work has gone into it, and I know already from speaking to developers and representatives of the construction industry, there are already developers using more nature-based solutions in individual housing or housing development. So I think there's lots of things that we can be doing that will not only ensure that we're treating the water that actually needs to be treated, but also doing it in a cost-effective, efficient and a more sustainable way.
Daniel Crossan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 10, Minister.
The numbers and types of access for developments are assessed on a site-specific basis as part of the planning process, taking into account site constraints and transportation assessment modelling. The Creating Places supplementary planning guidance is used in the design of all proposals for residential development throughout the north, from small-scale infill housing schemes to major projects on large sites incorporating a mix of uses. Neither Creating Places nor local or regional planning policy statements provide a requirement for more than one access to a development. And I'm informed that the current planning permission for the Mount Carmel development requires the construction of a second access from the site onto the Avish Road.
I thank the Minister for that answer. Minister, there are 6 separate housing developments in this complex, encompassing well over 600 to 800 houses which is a lot of people, a lot of residents. They were locked in their homes for the third time in the last couple of years because they couldn't get out due to a bomb scare on the main shared access route. What are you going to do, Minister, to ensure that the planning is going to be enforced to ensure people are safe and get to and from their homes when these events happen?
Well, I suppose just to offer my best wishes to us, because I think nobody likes to be in that situation, whether in terms of a security incident or wherever that may be. So I can't imagine how stressful and how anxious a time that must be, especially if it's happened on a number of occasions for those residents. As I've said, that second access must be delivered by the developer prior to commencement of any development in excess of the 66th dwelling within that portion of the site. The developer has reached the trigger, however, work is temporarily stopped on site, and I suppose there's maybe details of that I can't speak to, as a member may be aware in this House, but I suppose just to say officials are working closely to ensure that we get to that point.
Philip McGuigan.
As I've said earlier, road safety is a major priority for me as Minister, and I am committed to considering any initiatives that will improve road safety for everyone. I recently announced an extensive package of road safety measures aimed at safeguarding school children travelling to and from school, as I mentioned earlier, particularly around using school buses and people overtaking buses. I'm also taking forward a number of strategic interventions, including a consultation seeking views on a change to the law surrounding the use of handheld mobile phones while driving, a review of drink driving legislation, options to address drug driving, and I'm introducing graduated driver licensing. I'd also like to see what can be done to improve attitudes to speeding, not only for road safety purposes, but also to make places cleaner and greener. And I therefore asked my officials to prepare a paper on a number of speed-related matters, including the national speed limit on rural roads, HGV speed limits and 20-mile-per-hour speed limits in general, which I've also talked to in some of the previous questions, after which I plan to undertake a public consultation exercise on this important issue. Alongside this, I've asked officials to develop a new and forward-looking road safety strategy action plan. This is in partnership with our road safety stakeholders, who all work together to reduce the number of people killed or seriously injured in road collisions. I'm also keen to explore how we can work better together with our road safety partners and other departments, and as I've mentioned earlier, I've written to the Department for Education, to the Minister in the first instance, seeking a meeting to discuss this further to see how we can collaborate. I do believe that a multi-agency and a cross-departmental approach to tackling this issue is vital, and I am keen to work with others to discuss opportunities and agree a structured approach to improving the safety of children, particularly coming to and from school. And whilst all of these measures, I believe, have the potential to deliver significant road safety benefits, we can all take immediate action to improve road safety to ensure that 2030 target is met. We all can share a collective effort in doing so, and will make a difference going forward.
Mr McGuigan.
Thanks the Minister for her response, and I totally agree with her that we can all take our own actions into view when we're on the road and increasing safety. You mentioned graduated driver licences as an option in terms of more safety. Can I ask the Minister for more information in relation to it?
Sure.
Yes, so as I said, I'm deeply concerned at the number of deaths and serious injuries on our roads, and sadly younger drivers, particularly young male drivers, are significantly overrepresented in those statistics in terms of road traffic collisions. The graduated driver licensing aims to reduce the overrepresentation of new, mainly young drivers in fatal and serious road traffic collisions by providing new drivers with driving experiences and skills gradually over time in a lower risk environment. I want to see the graduated driver licensing implemented as soon as possible, and my officials are working to accomplish that. This is a major resource-intensive undertaking. Significant operational planning and preparation is required, including the amendment of current driver training, testing and post-testing arrangements. But I do think it's something that will have long-term impacts and will help to improve road safety for all users, not just for motorists. And I look forward to providing further detail as soon as we're at that point, because I think it's a really forward step in terms of our role in addressing road safety.
Edward Clark. Minister, very nice warm words about improving road safety. However, today's court judgment has ruled that your party and others, in terms of their support for the climate change policy, has had a major impact on that. So how do you judge that impact is going to allow, how do you judge that impact today will affect your work going forward to try and improve road safety in other areas of rural Northern Ireland in terms of those road upgrades?
Well, can I firstly say that this has been a very disappointing day, and my first thoughts are with all of the families who have lost a loved one, who have someone or who may have been injured themselves as a result of the road traffic collisions that have occurred along the A5. So this is not a day to be point scoring or anything like that. This is a day to look at what we need to do to move this forward. As the member may be aware, this is a 99-page ruling. So at this point in time, I now have to take time to consider the detail of that ruling, what the implications will be. But let me just say this. I'm committed that we will get the A5 delivered, that we will protect lives and to ensure that no more lives are lost on that road.
Moving on to topicals, Mark Durgan.
Cian Corlia, and I'm sure we all, at least I hope we all share the Minister's disappointment and frustration at today's judgment on the A5, but that will pale in comparison to the devastation felt by the many families who have lost loved ones along this route and who have led the campaign for change, and our thoughts are with them today. Can the Minister advise the Assembly on her immediate response to the decision, what implications it has for the future of this executive flagship project, and how her department intends to address the concerns raised by the court?
Yeah, so as I've said in response to the previous member, this is hugely disappointing. In fact, it's heartbreaking, particularly for all of those who have campaigned very strongly, all of those families involved who have put so much time and effort into it despite dealing with their own grief and their own loss. But they believe that this is the way to ensure that no other family goes through what they have gone through. And I think that's something that we all should reflect on, because the judge, indeed, in giving his judgment today, reflected on how this decision will cause anguish and heartbreak for all of those families. As I've also said, this is a very detailed judgment, and I think it will take some time for both myself and my officials and legal team to go through the detail of that, to look at what the implications are and how we chart a way forward. Because, as I've said, this road needs to be built. We cannot allow any more lives to be lost, and I am determined that we do find a solution and we do find a way forward, as I think that lives are too important, and I don't want any other family going through what those families have experienced.
Mr. Durkan.
Will the Minister, along with her executive colleagues, prepare emergency amending legislation to clarify the relevant section or sections of the Climate Change Act? An act that in its entirety was voted through by all in this House, preserving its core purpose, but clarifying that it cannot be used to block action necessary to save life. Or has she another plan B?
Well, again, as I've said, I mean, I want to see a solution to this. We need to act in the immediacy, but it's important that we do this very, very thoroughly. This is a very detailed decision. The implications of that we don't know at this stage, because I think it was maybe less than 3 hours ago that we got the judgment. So I think it would be remiss of me to start saying I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that without considering that in great detail. And I will be engaging with my legal team and officials on that in a very thorough manner, because, as I've said, this is the third time that there's been a legal challenge in relation to this road. Families are tired, families want to see this built, and that's my priority at the front of this. So I think as we chart through that and as we work our way through the judgment that the judge has provided today, we will be in a better position to make comment on that.
Peter McDonald.
Minister, can you provide an update on Belfast Rapid Transit too?
Sure.
So, just give me a wee second to go back to where I've lost my train of thought now. So, as you know, I made the announcement earlier in the year. So, at this stage, we were engaging with stakeholders and starting that process. And I have recently met some stakeholders from the Ormer Road end as well as retail NI. So we're looking at what the next stage is how that will look to ensure that there's proper engagement with all stakeholders, learning from what's happened in the past. But in terms of what else is happening, I can give you a more detailed response in writing, as I don't have all the detail in front of me, Peter, but that is the most recent update that I have.
McReynolds.
Minister, given how this project will improve air quality, reduce congestion and tackle climate change, can you provide assurances this project will be delivered as soon as possible and without undue delay?
Well, absolutely. I think I wouldn't have made the announcement if I felt that we couldn't do that. As I said when I gave that original statement a number of months ago, what was important for me is that whilst we weren't able to commit to the full project at that stage in terms of budgetary constraints, what I wanted to make sure is that we could do as much as we could with the budget available, as I've said in approach to other issues that are relevant to my department. So at this point in time, yes, I'm keen to see that delivered, and I'm committed to ensuring that's delivered at the earliest possible stage. If there are any unforeseen issues that may arise, we'll ensure to keep elected reps updated, the community updated, because I think with all major schemes there are potential for things to arise at any stage, but hopefully that won't be the case, and we will continue to work through that in the time ahead.
Alan Chambers.
Can the Minister offer an assessment as to why so many of the roadways in North Down are left with areas of standing water after heavy rainfall that can take a considerable time to drain away and that can result in road safety issues?
Well, without knowing what the specific parts of North Down that you're speaking to, I think firstly last week I met with councillors from Ards and North Down in relation to the road conditions, and they raised numerous issues around that, and we had a very positive discussion about how we can work together to ensure that we can address these issues, as is the case right across the north. In relation to specific areas, it may be for a number of reasons. Without having those assessments or engineering reports, I might not be able to provide the responses to that, but happy if the member would like to send in some specifics. We can get responses from the local section office in relation to those.
Mr. Chambers.
It's just that I'm wondering if the Minister is satisfied that the cleaning routine of roadside gullies offered by the local section office is actually adequate.
As I've said before, and as I've said in response to written questions, we do have a more limited service in terms of all of the operational duties that the department carries out due to the budget. And that is continually held under review, and that's why I continually am asking for additional funding to support the work of the department. So no, it's fair to say I'm not satisfied. I don't think anybody's satisfied. We always want to do more, we always want to achieve the highest standard, but unfortunately given the financial constraints that's not always possible, as I'm sure his colleague in terms of the Health Ministry will appreciate, and the challenges that presents for him as well. But as I've said, where there are particular issues or where they are leading to further road safety matters, happy for those to be sent in through the private office and we can look into them.
Mr. Speaker, will the Minister commit to taking immediate action to remove the illegally erected United Ireland billboard at Camlock Road roundabout to ensure compliance with the Article 87 of the Road Northern Ireland Order 1993, and can you provide a timeline for when it will be removed?
I wonder, has the member moved constituencies? He's now representing Uri Armagh as well. So I suppose just to say on that, I've had numerous questions in relation to the billboard. It is actually a matter for planning. It's a planning issue, so I would ask the member to maybe speak with the local council in relation to that.
Mr. Gasson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and certainly that's news to me and a lot of ones in the chamber. Sinn Féin have a history of erecting posters on this billboard at this roundabout. Maybe that's why the Minister is reluctant to provide a time frame of when it will be removed. My understanding is it's departmental owned land, and on that basis how can anybody apply for planning permission that isn't that of the department? So how do you square that with your pledge of office, and how do you plan to take action? That is your land. Obviously it would have to be your department that would lodge a planning application. Sinn Féin have used this in the past, and surely you're not applying for a Sinn Féin erected billboard.
Okay, I'm not too sure where to start in relation to that, but what I will say, I know that the land is partly owned by the department. It's not all owned by the department. However, if I know in the past where there have been previous billboards erected, the department has made contact with those who have erected it. So happy to take further questions on it, or if you want to write in and we can specifically ask. I don't believe it's a Sinn Féin billboard at the minute.
Kelly.
Does the Minister agree that the Fiscal Council report indicates that the only alternative to the current funding model of NI Water would involve water charges, which should be opposed?
Yeah, I thank the member for this question, and I agree that the report from the Fiscal Council is very welcome. It confirms what I and my predecessor have been consistently saying, that in terms of alternative funding models for NI Water, they would only lead to the introduction of water charges for householders here. So for the avoidance of doubt, I will not be introducing water charges and not be adding to that financial burden that many people here would be facing if that was the case. And I feel that others may be de facto campaigning for water charges to be imposed on families here at a time when the cost of living is soaring, especially if we've seen events over the recent days which could potentially impact on energy costs. I think it's fair to say that others maybe gloss over or simply fail to mention the reality of what that will mean for household budgets, for parents who are already struggling with childcare costs, for young people maybe starting out in their career path. And also I think it's important to say that money spent on additional bills will not be spent in our local economy. So there are wide-reaching implications as a result of this, and it's something I'm not prepared to do, and I think the Fiscal Council report strongly points out that would be the implication.
Mr. Kelly.
I
thank the Minister for that answer.
To what she said, does the Minister agree that at a time when parents are skipping meals so that their children can eat, as highlighted by the Consumer Council, it would be unconscionable to place further costs on top of their bills?
Yeah, and I think that's a very pertinent point, because I did see the report from the Consumer Council. It reported that food costs account for almost a quarter of households' basic spending, with almost half of young adults surveyed fearing their food will run out before they have the money to buy for. So again, I think, sorry, Speaker, it's so hard to concentrate when people are having full conversations here.
Fair enough on that one. Different thing if you're actually participating in the debate, so keep conversations down, please.
The average household rate in the north for 24-25 was £1,180 per annum. So if we apply the notional figure of £590 on top of that, the starting point would be an average annual bill of almost £1,800 for households. So again, I think it's unfair to add that additional financial burden to households. I think that it's important that we continue to look at the other options that I've already outlined on numerous occasions in this House, and ensure that whatever way we achieve what we need to do, that it isn't at the detriment of the ordinary people in all of our communities.
Declan Kearney.
Minister, I welcome the emphasis that you've placed upon soaring costs for working families, the pressures that hard-pressed households are having to contend with. That said, can you explain how you plan to bridge the funding gap for NIW this year without there being further pressure added to the budgets for local households?
Yeah, I thank the member for this. I mean, the Fiscal Council report in the main considers how that funding gap can be closed. But I think it's important to put that into perspective. So we're currently talking about a difference of 55 million between the indicative amount my department is allocating to capital funding to NI Water, which is 350 million, and what NI Water says it needs to deliver in terms of capital funding for this year, which is 405 million. So I continue to look at what other practical and innovative ways that I can to address that current funding gap, which will include assessing the responses to the consultation on developer contributions, and also continuing to work with executive colleagues for increased funding throughout the year. I think that there are always opportunities there, and I continue to lobby very strongly, in particular, for NI Water.
Mr. Kearney.
I thank the Minister for her answer so far.
My own constituency, I'm dealing with situations where the shortcomings of developers in relation to their responsibilities in respect of wastewater infrastructure. Can you provide an update for us today on the developers' contributions consultation, please?
as I said, that the consultation is currently ongoing. It opened on the 21st of March 2025 and will close this Friday at noon. So I would encourage anyone who wishes to have an input to do so before then. Because I think everyone's feedback is very valuable in relation to this discussion. We've had numerous debates in this chamber regarding wastewater infrastructure and the solutions to fixing that. So I would be very keen to hear from everyone. Once that consultation period ends, my officials will immediately begin analysing the responses we have received from consultees, which will help to inform my decisions on next steps. The consultation has been seeking views on whether, and if so, how my department could introduce developer contributions to help fund the necessary improvements for our wastewater infrastructure. And it proposes two main options. Option 1 around voluntary developer contributions, and option 2, which is a compulsory developer contribution levy, which would involve requiring a financial contribution from developers, which would be used on a prioritised needs basis across the whole of the North. So potentially both options could be taken forward, or one or the other. So that will depend on the outcome of the consultation, and as soon as the time comes that I'm in a position to do so, we will update the House.
That concludes questions to the Minister. Yes, in a moment. Minister, you had 15 supplementary questions answered. The good news is that you weren't bottom of the list. The bad news is that you're very close to it. Mr O'Toole, point of order.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I'm wondering if you could advise on how we might proceed if a minister makes what appear to be almost directly contradictory statements one after the other.